All right, so I thought I'd make a vlog about going back to Club Motocross as probably as a veteran after a lot of time off, or maybe even you've never raced before. So the question was where to start this vlog, and that wasn't a straightforward question, but maybe the place to start is why I went back to motocross, and then before that, it's probably good just to set the scene just a little bit and say, so what is my background? So I am currently just in my early 60s, and I was in my very late 50s when I went back to motocross. I started, like a lot of older riders, back in the mid 1970s as a youngish teenager, riding club motocross in the south of New Zealand. Now, we had no land. We got into it because the family went to a motocross, and I just thought it was fabulous. And Mum was good enough to get us an old bike to start riding on, and so I kind of learnt to ride in club motocross, as we didn't have any other land, and that was just how you did it. So, despite what you might think about the south of New Zealand, you can't just ride anywhere you like all the time, sort of thing. So actually, the amount of riding I had was quite limited. So I have no records, but you're probably talking about 10 or 12 hours a year in your mid-teens. And then later in life, I continued a similar pattern. Really, I got heavily engaged in various careers, got married, had kids, mortgaged, all that sort of stuff. And so I raced club motocross on occasions through the 90s in particular, and I always kept riding. So I always had a dirt bike, and I did various types of riding, sometimes trail riding, sometimes club motocross, but in most years 10 or 12 hours a year would have been a really good year, and in some years I did zero because of work and family commitments and various issues. So anyway, the long and the short of it is, I'm a guy that I love my dirt bikes, and I've been doing it for a long time, but I've never had done a lot of it. I'm not fast, so I'm a club hacker. I just ride because I enjoy it. It keeps me fit, and well, if you're listening to this vlog, you know why we ride. So I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of why we ride. You know why we ride. The question is how you'd like to ride if you're listening to this. Anyway, so that was all good. So I hadn't been to a club motocross since the 1990s. We moved to the UK in the year 2000. And most of that time I've been riding cross country in the later years with my son, and that was great. Then the pandemic came along. My son went off to university down under, as it happens. The club folded up that I was riding with. It was just a pay and play, go and ride all you like, fun club. The guy that was running it, Nigel, great guy, but I think he was tired of it anyway. He got better employment in the pandemic, and he closed it up. And I didn't want to go racing cross country in my 50s. I'm not going to ride for 3 or 4 hours in a race at a time. It's just not going to happen. So the question was really whether to keep riding as a practice rider or whether to go racing. So perhaps that's a good place to start. All right, so option one is, should you go and join a club and race, or should you just be a practice track rider? Now, obviously there's a presumption in that, and that is that although I wasn't born in this part of the world, in the southeast of the UK, despite the population base, and given the population base, there's actually a pretty good selection of practice tracks that are open Saturdays, Sundays, Wednesdays, and some tracks even Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So that's fabulous to have that choice. So for some of you may simply not have that choice. So you may be looking at going back to club motocross because that's how you access the land, and that's how I started. So that may be that. But if you have the choice, then it is a question. And so one of the first things on my list when I was thinking about, do I just keep using the practice tracks for the years ahead, or do I go back to club motocross, was the fact that there is a decent selection of practice tracks, but the clubs had access to a bunch of other tracks as well. So one of the reasons I went back to motocross was to get access to a wider selection of tracks. Beyond that, though, there is a fundamental question. If you're going to go club racing, it's about speed, right? So we're talking motocross here, and it's all about speed. So if you want to improve, maybe a statement of the obvious, but if you want to improve, then racing is the way to go about it. I'm not saying you can't get faster on a practice track. I'm sure you can, and I'm sure the more you do, the faster you'll get. But if you really want to make progress, racing is the way to do it. So if you're looking to build speed, then mixed practice and racing is the ideal answer, and as much of it as you can on both fronts. So so that to me is a major reason for going back to motocross. Is I'm old, I've never been fast, but throughout most of my life, when I had all those other commitments, I kept telling myself at some point I'll get a break in my career and I'll go and ride a lot for a couple of years and try and build some speed, and that kind of never happened. For the reasons, if you're an older rider, you understand. So part of it for me is, well, okay, I'm still fit enough. I've now got the time and the money, so is it worth having a crack? And so it was about speed, but it is definitely something to think about as to, if we're talking about improving your riding, there's lots of ways you can improve riding now, from becoming a trials rider through to becoming a fast motocross rider. But it's very much a personal thing as to whether you think speed is something you want in your life at this stage. Obviously, in some sense, it's nice to go fast. I think the flow gets more enjoyable, so on. I think we'd all like to be faster if you're into motocross, but there's definitely a price to pay, right? The risk increases substantially, and later in your life, you really want to think about how much risk you want to take on. So I'll leave that with you, but that's a consideration. Anyway, so moving on, the third major item on my list of why I'd have a crack at going back to club racing really was the social side, and the idea that if you go to a set track with a set bunch of riders, that you might have more luck in getting to know people. It's not that the practice tracks here are unsociable, but people do. There is a bit more of a sort of people just turn up, ride as much as they can, and then bugger off onto the distance. So, the social side of it was definitely a part of it, and that has been vastly more successful than I really ever could possibly have imagined. The vet scene is really thriving, certainly in the UK, and I'm sure in the other big markets as well. The over 40s scene is growing. There's lots of over 40s, 50s and 60s riders returning or still have been there. I'll talk about that more just in a second. But generally speaking, my experience has been that in the vet classes, people are friendly, right? You're there. The vast majority are not. You're not going to be a national champion or a world champion or whatever. You're there because you like to ride. You enjoy having a bit of a race, a bit of a tussle on the track with someone, and you like to talk about bikes. And so the older riders have been fabulous. And I'd like to say I've made a few friends over the last few years, and that's been completely awesome. So certainly, it was not the highest item on my list, but actually looking back over the last, it's 4 years now since I started going back to Club MX. Actually, it's been one of the biggest benefits is that it is more social, or it has been for me anyway. So that has been brilliant. And if you're looking to build mates, I know for people that have lived in the same place all the time, you've got your mates, and it's not the same. But particularly if you've been mobile and you're looking to build up friendships, the vet scene has been cracking, and it's just a fun scene. So all right, so that's it. So those were sort of my reasons. Let's move right along. All right, so the second point on my things I've learned list is just a bit of a reality check. Be under no illusions, the veteran classes are not slow, so it is not an easy option if that's what you might be thinking. So obviously you get a wide variety of people riding in the vets class. There's a bunch of people, or one or two like me, old hackers that have been puttering away for a long time and just now have the time and the opportunity to go back to club racing but have never been quick. There's people that are converting over from road riding or other forms of riding. They haven't been MX riders in the past. And so there are a bunch of old hackers around there just having a nice time, like me. But be warned, particularly for the older, well-established clubs, a bunch of the riders in the veterans classes are the racers that never stopped racing. And what's more, some of those racers were professional in their past. So there's an opportunity there. You may get to ride with someone that you saw from the sidelines when you were much younger, and that's cool because, as I said, the social side is really good, and people are really happy to talk to everyone else. So that's great. But they are fast, right? So or at least the front runners are fast. And if you go to events like I've been to a couple of ACU events where they've got a timing system, and you look at the lap times of the very fastest riders in the over 40s and 50s, they will just be a gnat's cock off the pro class. So just a word of caution, it's not a slow class, but next we'll move on and talk about how do you deal with that. Right, so the third thing I've learned is good news for some of you. And that is, if you're sitting there worrying about, well, yeah, okay, I was quick back in the day, but it's 20 years since I've ridden, well, I've forgotten how to ride, then the answer to that, I think, is quite straightforward, and that's no. If you've been really fast at some point in the past, you'll be fine, right? In terms of dealing with the class, it might take you a few hours to get used to it. Just how physically demanding it is will be a bit of a shock if you haven't been on the bike for a long time and all that. But if you've been fast, you'll be all right. You don't have a major issue dealing with the speed of the class. So it's just a question of, if you've been out it for a long time, getting the confidence to get a bike, get a bit of practice in, and get out there. It'll all be good. I wish that I had a problem like that. Moving on. So my fourth point is one that I have deep personal experience in, and that's what's the deal if you're coming back to Club Motocross in the vets class and you've not been fast in the past, or maybe you haven't raced at all. Well, my message here is all is not lost by any means, but you just need to be a bit realistic, and you need to pace yourself and set yourself small and realistic goals and take bite-sized chunks out of it. So what I mean by that is, this is how I did it, right? So first of all, you think, okay, well, my aim is to get through 3 motos, right? Finish all 3 motos, hopefully with you intact, with the bike intact, and with a smile on your face. So you start there, right? Then sort of the next big one on my list was to see if you can chase anybody down, right? Anybody at all, right? So if you can, that's great. If you're not, there's always a few will fall off and come from behind. So see if you can hold people off, although don't be an idiot about it. It is a vet class after all. But see if you can hold people off. If they get past you and they're not going too much faster, try to keep up. Try to take the position back if you can. And so chip away at that. I think one of the biggest goals for me over the first 2 years was just to really cut down on the degree to which I was getting lapped by the front runners. Now, there's a limit to what you can do if you get ex-national and international riders in the race. Unless the races are incredibly short or the track is incredibly long, you're going to get lapped, and so you just need to be okay with that. The upside is that in the vets, these people are really friendly, and they will talk to pretty much anybody. So go and say hello and pick their brains. I've got some quite helpful advice from people that have lapped me. So anyway, so there's, it's an upside down. So it's a question of how you look at it. So just be realistic, and then just build up bit by bit as you go, bite-sized chunks. Just try to do a bit better. Try to catch people. Try not to be lapped so much. And above all else, just have fun and keep working at it. There's no doubt that the key to success, which is no surprise, is time on the bike. And so if you're a vet and you've got less demands from family and perhaps work, and you've got more time to go and practice and everything else, there is an opportunity to get into racing and move yourself forward, which kind of preempts my point number 5. All right, so that sort of quite naturally feeds into my 5th point, which is, or it's a question that you might have in your mind, right? Which is, I've been riding for a long time, I've been racing for a long time, I'm over 50 or 60 or wherever you are in life, can I still improve, right? And so I think that's actually not a crazy question to have in your mind. My answer to that is actually an easy one, and also from my own experience. And the answer is, yeah, absolutely, you can still improve, even if you've been a rubbish rider, and hacked away like I have and really never got any great speed. Can you improve at this late stage of life? Yeah, absolutely. The key is to keep at it, and to try and get riding regularly if you possibly can. So the opportunity that you may have if you're in your over 50s is, the fact that you don't have such constraints from the family and maybe from business as well, depending upon what you do with your time. But But if you can get time, and that's been one of the issues for me, is that I found if you can ride twice a week, which you can do in this part of the world if you don't have work constraints because the tracks are around the place, that's when I really start making progress. So if I ride twice a week, my physical conditioning improves, my riding improves. The two are closely linked, as anyone who's an ex-motocrosser will know. And so definitely you can improve. It's an objective measure. I went to Toddington a few weeks ago. I looked at my lap times from 2022 when I first went back to Club Motocross. The track has had some minor tweaks, but nothing substantial, and I think the length is essentially the same. But my lap time is improved by 20 seconds. So I've gone from being miles behind the bunch of the vets to nipping at their heels. So still more work to do, but definitely big improvement, and that's with my work unfortunately sort of dominating a few of the summers in between, which has not been terrifically helpful. But anywho, so that's the good news. Is my experience is, at least for me anyway, is that you can be old and slow if you put the time in and keep going at it. You can get better, and you will get better if you want to. So anyway, so that's the 5 things I've learned really. It's the end of my list that I'd written down. Not much else to say really. Hope some of these thoughts are helpful, at least to churn over the issues. And if you decide to have a go, best of luck. And if you're in this part of the world and you see me at the track, come say hello. Anyway, usual story. Thanks for listening. If you've listened this far, if you'd like to like and subscribe and all that stuff, good as gold. If not, that's absolutely fine too. Ciao for now.